For majority of the 2010s, the NBA was ruled by two juggernauts. The Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers absolutely dominated their conferences every single year for 4 years straight. And everything that this rivalry did to the NBA, from super teams to careers being born and careers ending, this 4-year stretch was a very pivotal moment. And it shaped a lot of what the NBA is today. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to be taking a deep dive into this rivalry and everything that happened before, during, and after. But enough stalling, let's get into the video. So, before Steph Curry and LeBron James would absolutely bless these franchises, the Cavs and Warriors were good teams, just not great ones. The Cavs were decent in the 90s, they had players like Mark Price and Brad Daugherty, and they'd often have a pretty good record, but they would annually get torn apart, embarrassed, and destroyed by Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls every single year. It was a pretty rough time to be a Cavs fan. The Warriors have made it to the finals a few times before, but only in the 60s and 70s with Wilt Chamberlain. And for a while, they were just a team with solid pieces, but nowhere near enough to contend for a championship anytime soon. The Cavs' luck would turn around though. In 2003, the most hyped up prospect in NBA history was entering the draft. And he was a kid born and raised in Ohio, LeBron James. The Cavs were bad enough in the regular season to actually land LeBron, and instantly all eyes were on the Cavaliers. LeBron had a good first few years and was living up to everybody's expectations, but things wouldn't get really interesting until the 2007 playoffs. They were nowhere close to a rivalry yet, but the Cavaliers and the Warriors both proved themselves in the same playoffs. The Golden State Warriors were the 8th seed, led by Baron Davis, Monte Ellis, Steven Jackson, Mike Dunleavy, and some other solid players. And throughout the season, they got the name the We Believe Warriors. We Believe was their slogan throughout the year, and they proved their beliefs in the playoffs. They were matched up against the 1st seed Dallas Mavericks, who had just made it to the NBA Finals, and the Warriors, as the 8th seed, somehow managed to beat the Mavs in 6 games. This is still looked at as one of the greatest upsets ever. They would end up losing in the second round, but they had proved their point. And while the Warriors were beating the defending NBA champions, the Cavaliers were trying to become the new ones. As a 23-year-old LeBron James would lead the Cavs to their first ever NBA Finals in their franchise's history. This was big for the Cavs and for LeBron. They had spent the past 4 decades getting washed out of the playoffs every single year, and now they sat in the NBA Finals against the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs were already a great team, and Tim Duncan was in his prime, and the Cavs didn't really stand a chance. As great as LeBron was, his supporting cast was actually terrible, and this team is looked at by a lot of people as the worst finals team ever. Nobody knew it at the time, but the Warriors and the Cavs both having the 2 most significant moments in these playoffs was a sign of things to come. The Warriors had a solid, exciting young point guard on their team that they believed could take them all the way to the promised land. But that point guard's not the skinny, baby-faced kid in Under Armours that we all know today. They were thinking of Monte Ellis. So when the Golden State Warriors selected Steph Curry with the 7th overall pick in the 2009 draft, Warriors fans couldn't see the vision. They already had Monte Ellis, they didn't need another point guard, especially not one with bad ankles and who shoots too much. Steph played great in his rookie season, and the Warriors seemed to have a lot of potential. But on the other side of the NBA, LeBron James was about to become the most hated man in sports.
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
Miami Heat.
The infamous decision. After the Cavs had spent the past few seasons losing every single year, LeBron was done losing. He was entering his prime, and he saw what the 2008 Celtics did, and he knew that he had to do the same if he wanted to beat them. So, he joined the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and it's safe to say that Cleveland wasn't very happy with the decision. LeBron was an absolute villain to the entirety of Ohio, and honestly the whole league. People thought it was a cheap move, and that he was taking the easy way out. So much that even Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavs, sent a pretty upset open letter about the whole situation, promising the Cavs a long overdue championship without LeBron. Which we all knew very well that was not going to happen, but at least they were optimistic. The Cavs and the Warriors were both in weird spots at this point. The Warriors had 2 point guards trying to coincide with little to no help down low. And Cleveland just lost their best player in their franchise's history during his prime to a team in the same conference. They both sort of felt like a lost cause at this point. And while LeBron and the Heat were dominating every other team in the NBA, the Warriors and the Cavs were slowly building a roster. The Warriors had the 11th overall pick in the 2011 draft, and they selected Klay Thompson, a great three-point shooter who could also play some defense, and he was expected to play the 2. It was evident at this point that a change needed to be made with the Golden State Warriors, and they doubled down on Steph Curry by trading Monte Ellis to the Bucks in exchange for Andrew Bogut. This gave the Warriors a great low post defender, and it let Klay Thompson and Steph Curry grow together as a backcourt. Then, just a few months after this trade, the Warriors, without realizing it, drafted a player who would become the missing piece on this Warriors team, Draymond Green. And they got him in the second round with the 35th overall pick. Everybody was still young, but this trio was the beginning of a dynasty. And while the Warriors were slowly becoming a team to respect, and Steph Curry was starting to have shooting performances nobody could understand, the Cleveland Cavaliers were doing the same. In the same draft class as Klay Thompson, the Cavaliers got the first overall pick, and they selected Kyrie Irving, who was a extremely skilled point guard who could score at will and had crazy handles, and Cavaliers fans were very excited. But they also knew that Kyrie alone wasn't going to be enough to end the drought and finally win a championship. While a young Kyrie was leading the Cavs and making grown men fall on the ground with one crossover, LeBron was entering his 4th straight finals with the Miami Heat. He had won 2 rings in 3 finals, and they would lose to the Spurs in the 2014 finals. This would evoke LeBron to make another big free agency decision. Dwayne Wade was getting old, and he made a promise to Cleveland that when he got there, he was going to be the one to end the drought and bring Cleveland a championship. In the 2014 offseason, the Cavs had the number 1 overall pick again and drafted small forward Andrew Wiggins. They would not end up keeping this pick though, and the front office was able to make a trade for one of the best power forwards in the league from the Minnesota Timberwolves, Kevin Love. It wasn't guaranteed that LeBron was going to come back, and if he felt like he wasn't going to be able to contend and actually compete to win, he definitely wasn't going to come back. But Kyrie was playing amazing, and Kevin Love had consistently been a great player. And they had a lot of other solid players on the team as well, so LeBron returned home. He came back to Cleveland and promised the city once again that he was going to bring them a championship. And after all these draft picks, team switches, wins and losses, the stage was set. And this officially marks the beginning of the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors rivalry. Steph Curry was playing at a historic rate and instantly became the clear best point guard in basketball and the best player in the league. He was so far and away the best player in the world that he won the unanimous MVP for the first time in NBA history. The closest was Shaquille O'Neal in 2000, who was 1 vote away from being unanimous MVP over 15 years earlier. Draymond Green and Klay Thompson were already all-star caliber talents, and they ended the year with 67 wins. It's also not a coincidence that the second Steve Kerr took over as head coach, they instantly started winning games and playing this great. Steve Kerr was an amazing head coach and a big piece to this Warriors team's success. The Cavs also had an excellent season. They ended it with 53 wins and the 2nd seed in the East, and both of them made it through the playoffs with ease. But unfortunately for the Cavaliers, Kelly Olynyk had ripped Kevin Love's arm out of socket during their playoff series, leaving him injured and sidelined for the rest of the playoffs. So their 3rd best player was out, but LeBron and Kyrie were still there, and people hadn't completely given up on him yet. This was about to be LeBron's 2nd finals appearance as a Cavalier and the Warriors' 1st since the 70s. And after 4 straight years of a Miami Heat super team and 2 straight years of seeing the Heat and Spurs, people didn't know what to expect. People didn't know if Cleveland could be a legit contender yet with Kyrie and Kevin Love, and there was still the stigma that 3-point shooting teams can't win championships. So both of these teams had a chip on their shoulder and something to prove to everybody. But the Warriors were still young. The trio of Curry, Klay, and Draymond didn't seem like they were going anywhere soon, and the Cleveland Cavaliers had a lot of pressure on their shoulders. Mainly on the shoulders of LeBron James, who had already promised this team a championship, and he had already broken the trust and the hearts of Cavs fans before. LeBron needed to bring Cleveland a championship for his legacy. So the series began, and just as Game 1 started, Kyrie Irving suffered a knee injury, which would leave him out of the series as well. So the Cavs had just lost their 2 best players besides LeBron, and the Warriors were on a hot streak. From this point, it was pretty clear the Cavs had no chance to win, but LeBron put this team on his back and led the Cavs to win their next 2 games. LeBron was a big factor, but we gotta give the GOAT, Delly, his flowers for how good of defense he played on Curry. He became a household name for a few weeks and never really had another moment like that again, but it was awesome to watch. After that, the Warriors won 3 straight games and beat the Cavs in 6. Besides the loss, LeBron played amazing in the series. So good that people actually talked about giving LeBron the Finals MVP, similar to how they gave Jerry West the Finals MVP even though he lost. But they didn't. They gave it to Andre Iguodala literally just because he played some really good defense on LeBron. Even though he didn't win Finals MVP, Steph Curry just debatably had one of the most impressive individual seasons ever. A unanimous MVP and a championship, there's not much more you can ask for. Draymond Green and Klay Thompson both played great, and the sky seemed like the limit for this team. As for the Cavs, they were thrown in a very interesting spot. In their first year together, they were 2 games away from a championship, with a lot of their best players being injured, so it was hopeful for them as well. And since we didn't get to see a matchup between these two with Kyrie and Kevin Love healthy and playing, everybody wanted to see how this Warriors team would do against a fully healthy Cavs team, and a rematch seemed necessary. The following season, the Warriors got much better, and they weren't just good in the regular season. They were literally the greatest regular season team ever. They beat the 1996 Chicago Bulls record for wins in a regular season with 73, and they truly seemed unstoppable. Nobody had an answer for them. We had never seen a 3-point shooting team like this so dominant over the whole league. And while the Warriors were dominating, the Cavs were still proving how great they are. Everybody was healthy, and although they didn't have an historic record like the Warriors, they still seemed like a very dangerous team. The Cavs and the Warriors were both the #1 seed in their conferences, and they both made it to the finals again. This was a rematch that everybody was excited for, and while the Warriors were the obvious favorites, they did just get pushed to 7 games by the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they were down 3-1 at one point. It's impressive that they came back from a 3-1 deficit, but the fact that a 73-9 team was down 3-1 to any team was a concern. So the series began, and just like a lot of people expected, the Warriors just seemed too good for the Cavs. They went up 3-1, and it seemed like the series was over. No team in NBA history had ever come back from down 3-1 in a final series ever, and this was a 73-9 team. And just when everybody was counting the Cavs out, and when everybody thought that LeBron had failed Cleveland once again, little did everybody know, the Cavs were about to make history. LeBron and Kyrie both dropped 40 points in Game 5, combining for 82 points. This went down as one of the greatest performances from a duo we have ever seen in the finals, and it gave the Cavs the win in Game 5. In Game 6, it was close, but after Steph Curry fouled out and LeBron had another 40-point masterclass, somehow, someway, the Cavs pushed the series to 7 games. This was one of the most highly anticipated games ever. The amount at stake in this one game was everything. The Cavs had a chance to make history in so many ways, beating the team with the best record ever. The stage was set, and the rest was history. I truly believe if you had to point to one game as the greatest NBA game ever played, I'd say this game is the clear best pick. The storyline, the moments, the game itself, everything about this game was storybook. Kyrie Irving's name was etched into the history books after the dagger he hit to basically win them the game. LeBron's block was one of the best defensive plays ever, and he finally delivered on his promise to bring Cleveland a championship. Unless you were a Warriors fan at this time, this was a great moment for basketball fans in general. But this is also why I say this rivalry ruined the NBA. At this point in time, everything was great. The Cavs and the Warriors were 1-1, and it seemed like the perfect setup for a trilogy finals between these two teams. And just when everybody thought everything was going to stay normal, Kevin Durant decided he was going to completely ruin the balance of the NBA. Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the league at the time, and a guy that just forced the Warriors to 7 games just a few months prior, the 7-foot-tall sniper who can dribble and score from anywhere, and the guy who was named MVP just 2 years before this. That Kevin Durant decided that the Warriors needed more help after being 4 points away from a NBA championship, and after literally proving to be the greatest regular season team ever. Kevin Durant joined them. And I know people want to compare it to LeBron leaving Cleveland or other super teams before like the Celtics, but none were like this. When LeBron joined the Heat, they were coming off a first-round exit. And as great as D-Wade and Chris Bosh are, they aren't Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. This was nothing like any other move ever. It was Kevin Durant realizing that he could literally create the most unstoppable team ever and saying sure, why not. It was an easy way out for KD. And as much as people still want to defend it as a good business move, that can be true, but it can also be the most immoral move we have ever seen in NBA history. Nobody for a second questioned who was going to win the championship this year. It didn't take a year of them dominating everybody to see who was going to win. The only thing that could stop them was injuries, and even then they had like 4 All-Stars. As uneven as people thought this matchup was going to be, the Cavs and the Warriors matched up against each other on Christmas Day, the first time since the Game 7, and to everybody's surprise, this game was an absolute war. Kyrie hit another amazing clutch shot over Klay Thompson that won them the game, and the Cavs actually beat this Warriors super team. This gave Cavs fans and NBA fans in general hope that this Warriors team was not invincible. So the finals came along, and to nobody's surprise, the Warriors and the Cavs both made it once again. And people don't realize this, but this was the first and only time ever two teams have played each other in the finals 3 years in a row. We've seen individual teams make 3 straight, and we've seen a lot of rematches, but never a trilogy. And while the Cavs had made history once before, it seemed nearly impossible for them to pull this one off. Especially because they entered the finals 12-0. Yes, they did not lose one playoff game before the finals. The Warriors took a 3-0 lead, but the Cavs were able to pull out a win in Game 4 after a Kyrie Irving 40-piece. In Game 5, we saw Kevin Durant hit a series-clinching shot directly over LeBron, and it sadly felt like a passing of the torch moment. A new dynasty had arrived, and everybody knew it. The Warriors won in a gentleman's sweep, and the NBA world was pretty disappointed, especially considering we were going to have to watch this team dominate for another season after this. As great as the Cavs looked, Kyrie Irving didn't feel the same way, and he demanded a trade right after losing. This was not good for the Cavs at all. Kyrie was an essential piece to their team, and it was definitely going to hurt them to not have him back. They traded Kyrie to the Boston Celtics, and they had an absolute mess of an offseason and beginning to the season. They kept trading for older players who used to be good, like D-Wade, Derrick Rose, and Isaiah Thomas, and they just kept falling apart. Until eventually they made a final trade that finally got the Cavs a pretty just okay amount of help, but just looking at the lineup, it seemed impossible for the Cavs to be able to contend again, especially against a super team like the Warriors. They were the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and since teams like the Raptors and the Celtics were doing so well, the Cavs' chances didn't look great. And once again, everybody counted out LeBron, and when everybody thought he was too old to contend, and that this team wasn't good enough, and that this was the end of the road for him, he proved everybody wrong. He literally activated prime LeBron and put up one of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history. He looked different this year, and while 2012 or 2013 is most likely LeBron's actual prime, this was one of the best LeBrons, if not the best I have ever seen. You can tell how bad he wanted to win, and it seemed like he was hitting game winner after game winner and sending these teams back home. And somehow made it to his 8th straight finals and brought the Cavs their 4th straight. The Warriors made it to the finals as well, and for the 4th straight year, it was Cavs versus Warriors. People were so done with these two being in the finals every single year, and this was a finals nobody was excited about. But in Game 1, LeBron put up an insane performance, and honestly one of his best finals performances ever. He dropped 50 points, and the Cavs actually had a chance at stealing Game 1, until this happened.
Hill misses. Rebound goes to the Cavs. J.R. Smith brings it back out. Throws it to Hill. Hill shot blocked. Time. You get the feeling J.R. Smith thought they had the lead.
He didn't know the score. James was trying to get a timeout.
And LeBron James is wide open on it.
Yes, J.R. Smith completely wasted LeBron's 50-point game, and it was all downhill from here. The Cavs got swept, and at the end of Game 4, LeBron went around and dabbed everybody up, including the players on his own team. This seemed like a goodbye to Cleveland once again, which pretty much everybody expected. Everybody knew he was getting older, and he didn't want to spend the rest of his career on a Cavs team with no help. LeBron had done his job, and everybody kind of expected him to leave. So in the offseason, he joined the Lakers and began his new start away from Cleveland. Cleveland went into a full rebuild and stood as one of the worst teams in the league for a while. The Warriors would make it to the finals once again in 2019, but Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson would get sidelined due to injury, and both of them would pretty much miss the whole next year. After they lost to the Toronto Raptors, Kevin Durant left the Warriors to go form another super team with the Brooklyn Nets, alongside Kyrie Irving and James Harden, which ended up failing bad. COVID happened, and LeBron and AD led the Lakers to a championship, giving LeBron his 4th. The original Warriors trio of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green went on a revenge tour in the 2022 playoffs and beat the Celtics in the finals, giving Steph Curry his first ever finals MVP and proof that they could win another ring without Kevin Durant. Which brings us to today. This month we saw the Warriors and the Cavs play each other twice, the Cavs now being led by Donovan Mitchell, and Chris Paul also now being in the Warriors, which is just weird considering the timeline of everything, and surprisingly, the Cavs beat the Warriors in both games. And as a kid who started watching the NBA right as this Cavs-Warriors rivalry started, and being from Ohio and always rooting for the Cavs to win, and after all these years, seeing the Cavs and Warriors play again, it made me appreciate what this rivalry was. Nobody really talks about the Cavs and the Warriors as this legendary rivalry, but it really was. Kevin Durant joining kinda ruined it, and he just made it so unfair, but it was still competitive, even at points when he was with the team. In a way, it ruined the balance of the league for a while, And just based off the Kevin Durant move, we saw a bunch of years of super team after super team being built. But looking at the league today, nobody really has any idea who's going to win any given year. So in a way, it was good for the NBA, because now we can appreciate parity and suspense and surprise once again. And as much as it sucked watching 5 All-Stars beat up every team they faced, it's already nostalgic looking back at it now. And I guess I just wanted to be the one to give this era of basketball its flowers. But let me know what you guys think about this rivalry and the time in the NBA. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and subscribing. I appreciate you all very much. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. But with that being said, I'm out of here, and I'll see you on the next one.